Good afternoon, TriCities Brew Club. I have just heated up my mash water to approximately 170 degrees Fahrenheit. And what I'm doing right now is just gravity feeding that water into my makeshift mash tun here out of a cooler. So once this has all filled out, it's going to be about 10 gallons, maybe a little bit less, of water required to maintain the mash at about 155 degrees of 24 pounds of grain for the I.P.A that I'm brewing today. Alright, so what you missed was the 10 gallons of hot water was added to the mash tun. I also am performing the dough in right now. I'm using my mash paddle here just to really work in and make sure that there aren't any clumps of grain. We're going to let this steep for about 60 minutes once I'm confident that there aren't any clumps. One thing that's a little bit concerning for me is how full my mash tun is between the grain bill and the water bill, based on what I was looking to achieve. This is the most full that my mash tun has ever been. So I'm just going to complete the dough in process here. I'll set it up for the constant recirculation and continue the video then. Okay, so I've completed the dough in process. Here's probably a better angle. You can see the mash tun valve here at the bottom of the screen. I have a recirculation 3/8 port in, and I have a T that I've set up here so that I can actually take samples with a pipette and use it on my hydrometer throughout the mash. And the thermometer that I've set in, all it really is I put a hole right through the lid here of the cooler so that I can insert this nice long probe thermometer. So this is just going to help me monitor and measure the temperature. So I was shooting for a 155 degree mash. Looks like we're a little bit higher than that, which is great because during the recirculation process, the wort is actually going to come out of the system, be exposed to the colder temperatures that are out here for a short period of time until it's recirculated back through. So after I have the process all set up with the pump, I'll continue the video. So we're about 15 minutes into the mash. What I've done here is set up this small 12-volt pump. I think it costs about $25 off of the internet. It's food safe. It's rated for 110 degrees Celsius, so that's more than safe enough for working with what we have here. So out from the mash tun, I've actually had to throttle back the valve quite a bit, and I'll show you the reason why in a few moments. But the idea here is that the steeped grains are going to come out, go to the input of the pump, which is very hot, to the output, and it's actually pushing us back up the line and coming back into the top here, which is being fed into a really simple PVC fitting here. I'll give you a peek. And what it's doing is actually creating a very light rain that's causing a little bit of foaming here with the grains, which is fine. So the purpose of this process is to maximize the efficiency of the grains. So the idea is through the constant mashing loadering process, we're actually going to clarify the wort every time that it passes through the grain bed and back around. And I've noticed that the first few minutes of this process, the actual liquid is quite dark. It's very difficult to see through. Being 15 minutes in, I'm not sure if you can see it, but I can actually read the writing on the other side of the hose now, so it's working really well. So due to the high water bill and the high grain bill in this very small mash tun that I've created, I have a bit of a problem here. So as I was mentioning a little bit earlier, I have a pipette that I use to draw samples to take the specific gravity readings, and maybe one day if I care enough I can start looking into pH checks. So what's happening here is we're having a little bit of foaming coming out of the valve, which is okay. So I've just put down a paper towel here that I folded up quite a bit just to catch that. I'm not too worried about it. This doesn't normally happen, but again, normally I don't have 24 pounds of grains with 10 gallons of sparge water. And the temperature, take a quick look here. I'm not sure if it's going to focus, kind of. We can see that we're still at the right optimal temperature here, despite the fact that the liquid is being drawn out of the mash tun and being recirculated back in. Alright, so I'm just going to do a specific gravity check here, post that to BrewToad, and I'll continue when it's time to perform the actual sparge. Alright, so we're just a little over 30 minutes into the recirculation of the mash here. Temperatures dropped a little bit. It's still probably about 155-ish. It's really hard to tell on these analog dials. But we're getting some pretty good clarity. It's improved even further. It has a really nice rich color rather than a very dark brownish color that it had before. So I think the grains are really filtering well. So I've prepared my hops for most of the additions. I'm using 4 different hops with this I.P.A. I'm keeping track of all of my my temperature readings, my specific gravity readings, and recording it within BrewToad so that I can share it with the larger team. So one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm preparing for the sparge, and I'm using my my hot liquor tank. It's an old aluminum, well, not old. It's an aluminum. It used to be my brew kettle actually that I converted into a hot liquor tun. What we can see here is that there is the thermometer hole there, where I got the idea for putting a hole at the top of my cooler. So I have the hot water out, 3/8 fitting. I have a wart in and a wart out, or vice versa. I'm going to show you some of the reasons why I have those extra spouts on this tank here. One of the things that I tried to do earlier on, you can see I made a very poor job at converting an old immersion chiller into a Herms coil. So what I was able to do was to actually bring in the mash, the mash water, have it run through hotter temperatures to increase the temperature to help stabilize. Maybe take a look at doing some step mashing, something fancy like that. But I found that with gas, it was just too difficult to regulate the consistency of the temperature during the mash by hand. I would prefer to have perhaps an electronic system with a PID. So while I'm heating up the sparge water here, we still have about 20-ish minutes left into the mash. Once that's complete, what I'm going to do is just use gravity. I'll place the hot liquor tank up here on my my work surface, and it's just going to drain into the in here. I will have the mash tun out, drain into my boil kettle, which is over there right now. I'll put it back up onto the burner, and I'm expecting to pull off about 13 gallons out of here. I'm looking for a 90-minute boil. I usually like to have a fairly good boil, so I hope that I'll end up with somewhere between 10 and 11 gallons at the end. Yeah, I'll continue when I see you next. Before we get into the rest of the mash here, some of my previous posts were around the conversion of this plastic induction cone to put in a camlock fitting. It has a really nice secure fit. Right now there's about 16 gallons of OxyClean and city water in there. It's just been soaking. I installed just a really simple ball valve on the bottom here for being able to get the yeast cake sucked out here and leverage this induction cone as a secondary before I use this racking outlet to put that into a keg or into some other type of vessel. So I thought it would actually be pretty cool to see what kind of force this 2-inch ball valve would have full. It's about 16 and a half gallons. I don't know if you can see that measurement there, fluid right now. I've heard some problems with really small ball valves being effective at getting the yeast cake out of the fermenter, out of the primary. So I'm really curious. So I think this is going to be kind of cool to share. So we'll experience it at the same time. All right, so we give this ball valve a turn. Wow. So got some pretty good force. Obviously, I would just let that run for a second into a bucket, but you can see that it's got some pretty good power here. So I'm fairly confident that the 90-degree elbow is not going to prevent me from being able to successfully get the yeast cake out of there. All right, I'm going to clean this up, sanitize it, and get it ready for after the boil. All right, so now I'm doing the sparge process. What we can see is I have the HLT set up with the hot water out. It's about 170 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe a little bit more. Really just stall out the conversion process at this point. So I can see that the hot water HLT out is coming to the MLT in. If I lift up the lid here, we can try and see a balance. The light's getting pretty bad here. But you can see the hot water is raining onto the grain bed there. The grain bed's pretty far down, so I'll just keep it at this speed if possible. Moving over here, we can see that the MLT out, I've got that open wide. The liquid's really clear, actually. I'm really happy with that. So I have my little 12-volt pump here, taking all of the water that's coming down here and pushing it out into the boil kettle. So the boil kettle is filling up with the liquid right now. So my goal here is to get about somewhere between 13 and a half, maybe 14 gallons of wort in here. I'll take a specific gravity reading of that and start my 90-minute boil.